Good afternoon, and welcome to UOE News. I'm Ray. We are live from the University of Essex today, and we're going to be talking to you about a somewhat controversial topic that is very relevant to us and the environment. In today's society, there are multiple diets for us to choose from, but does the diet that we choose actually impact the environment? There is, of course, the most common diet, one that includes meat, fish, dairy, and eggs. Secondly, you have the vegetarian diet, one that excludes meat and fish, but does allow dairy and eggs. Lastly, we have the vegan diet, or the plant-based diet. This diet excludes meat, fish, dairy, and eggs, and other animal-derived products such as honey. We will discuss both the pros and cons of plant-based diets, as well as check in on the carbon footprints of some of the most popular vegan products found in our supermarkets. Now we go live to our sustainability correspondent Amy, who's been researching the facts on meat consumption. Over to you, Amy.
Thank you, Ray. The most popular diets in today's society contain meat. However, did you know that cows are the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases? A cow, on average, releases between 70 and 120 kilograms of methane per year. Although methane's half-life is short compared to CO2, it is much more potent in the atmosphere. The effect of methane on the climate is 23 times higher than that of CO2. Contributing further to this, vast amounts of land are required not only for farms, but to grow food for cattle as well. Forests are one of the most important global stores for CO2, and vast amounts are cleared every year to produce beef. This is the biggest cause of deforestation in the whole of the Amazon. A study from the University of Oxford found a kilogram of beef is responsible for the equivalent amount of CO2 emitted by the average European car every 250 kilometers. The report said that adhering to health guidelines on meat consumption could cut global food-related emissions by nearly a third by 2050, but the widespread adoption of a vegetarian diet would bring emissions down by 63%.
Thanks, Amy. Now over to Tiana, our local reporter, who's been gathering the facts on why veganism might not be as sustainable as you might think.
Sorry. You might always hear quotes like you don't really care about the planet if you're not vegan, or to save the world you must become vegan. But to what extent does veganism actually help the planet? Reducing or cutting meat intake is one thing, but what about the food you're replacing it with? The number of vegans has increased by 160% over the past 10 years. But where in the world are these food replacements coming from? Eating a lamb chop from down the road is considerably better than an avocado that has been produced through the deforestation of the rainforest and been flown across the world. A new study conducted by Carbon Footprint Ltd claims a pack of 2 avocados has an emissions footprint of 846.36 grams of carbon dioxide, almost twice the size of 1 kilo of bananas. A plant which is not environmentally friendly and is widely used by vegans for protein and milk substitutes is soybean. As well as the air miles contributing to the carbon footprint, there is also a plague of illegal soybean plantations in Brazil, killing not only the current biodiversity but the future biodiversity as well. Once a plantation like this is planted, the nutrients are lacking for anything else to grow thereafter. Now on to a highly consumed vegan product used for almond milk, protein and fibre. You guessed it, almonds. More than 80% of the world's almond crop is grown in California, which has been experiencing its worst drought on record. It takes 1.1 gallons, that's 5 litres of water, just to grow one almond. Because of how high a demand there are orchards continuously planted. Furthermore, insatiable demand for almonds is harming honeybees, which is already a species that is suffering from endangerment. Almond trees need to be pollinated, and they're bringing 1.6 million hives a year to California, an area with a high amount of pesticides, which, as you can tell, is a recipe for disaster. With what we've learned through this, how sustainable really is keeping a plant-based diet in terms of the environment. In the following video, we will see just a small amount of branded alternative products for the vegans and vegetarians, with the current most popular being Quorn, with YouGov rating it as the 125th most famous food and snack brand, no doubt owning its name from its delicious veggie chicken nuggets, allowing alternative diets to be just as simple as eating chicken nuggets and chips for dinner. With the brands you see being made in Yorkshire and all UK-based factories, the carbon footprint of these foods is increasingly less than a meat alternative.
For example, a bag of crispy nuggets carbon footprint is only 1.5 kilograms of carbon per kilogram of product, farm to shop, in comparison to chicken, which is listed as the 6th on Green Eat's list for highest carbon footprint at 6.9 kilos of carbon equivalent. We found shocking results when we looked at chocolates. Even the dark chocolates that suggest they are from sustainable sources contain palm oil, mentioned before as a large contributor to the environmental degradation in South America.
We argue that eating meat isn't all that bad. The key is sustainability. Could restorative and regenerative agriculture be the future? We chatted to Rogers, a regenerative farmer. In her opinion, animal waste is not waste at all. It's actually fertilizer, and it can be quite valuable to the ecosystem. She also said that we don't see it that way today because we store it in manure lagoons and we're overcrowding animals in factory farm settings. Groups including cattle, bison and wildebeest are born to roam. Movement is essential to their survival because they must avoid predators and constantly seek a fresh food source. The fertilized ground they leave behind replenishes itself. The new grass pulls carbon down through its roots and feeds it back to the bacteria in the soil, which in turn provides nutrients to plant life. The difference between industrial and sustainable farming is very drastic. Industrial vegetable crops contain more nitrates and are often heavily sprayed with pesticides, which can harm the environment. With industrial agriculture, there is a large amount of topsoil erosion by which the soil is depleted of vital nutrients due to lack of protection from the elements, such as the wind, sun, and rain. The inevitably causes erosion and nutrient depletion of the soil, whereas with sustainable farming, the food is grown with minimal or no use of pesticides or other dangerous chemicals, making them much better for the environment as it sends less pollutants out into the ecosystem. In sustainable farming, the soil is protected via crop rotation and composting methods, giving the soil a chance to replenish itself and avoid overexploitation.
So what does the data say? A survey was conducted and distributed to the people of Colchester via social media. This first graph asked people if they believed that dietary choices have a direct impact on climate change. 40 people answered, and of those 40 people, 92.5% said yes, 7.5% said no. The next graph asks what diet, in their opinion, had the least impact on the environment. Of the 40 people that answered, 10% said a diet including meat and dairy, 77.5% said a plant-based diet, and 7.5% said they didn't think dietary choices impact the environment at all. The last graph asked people if they would be willing to switch to a plant-based diet if evidence suggested that it would positively impact the environment. 62.5% said yes, 5% said no, and 27.5% said they would consider cutting down on meat consumption, but they wouldn't cut it out completely. Additionally, 7 people commented that they actually were already vegan or cutting down on their meat consumption. And 6 people responded that switching to a plant-based diet would negatively impact them and their health. But it is important to remember that as the survey was passed around local social media groups, the results may be biased towards location. Plant-based diets are, without a doubt, an emotive and controversial topic, especially with the recent increased public focus on climate change. Because of this, it's important to look at the facts with a balanced and academic view. From the evidence we've seen so far, it can be concluded that a plant-based diet does have the least negative impact on the environment and climate change. Considering this, we noted that there are still unsustainable plant-based food products, such as almonds with their poor water use efficiency, and exotic fruit, vegetables, and the air miles involved in shipping them. What we can take from this is that while veganism is the least harmful on the whole, diet is a spectrum, and expecting the majority of the population to go vegan is unrealistic. Instead, cutting down on meat consumption and eating local produce is a great start in changing the impact on our environment.